by letting go of this heavy stuff, you open yourself up to these like light miracles, to the magic that is available in life. And if you can drop these lower frequencies and move into that higher frequency, your ability to manifest is much quicker. You pull in better people, better experiences. You pull in experiences that match you. So if you're embodying and radiating a frequency and an energy of love and acceptance and unity and connection, those are the type of people and experiences you're going to pull in. Hi, friends and soul family. This is Caroline from Carousel, and your energy is safe with me. I'm here today, October 5th, 2020, to share the messaging I've been getting, share the universe messaging I've been getting to help you move through this period more eloquently, more gracefully, in a more unified manner. So we have some, and I'm sure you're feeling it already, that there's shadows coming up. So right now, we're given the universal energy opportunity via the astrology and the ascension, the great awakening, the shift to 5D, the Mother Earth, Mother Gaia ascension, whatever resonates with you, but it's all the same thing. It all is contributing to the same path that we are on as a humanity, as a collective, as a um, collective on Mother Earth, on this planet. Is I'm sure you're already feeling that many of the shadows within yourself are coming forward. And not only are we seeing that within ourselves, but we're seeing that on the macrocosm scale as well. So the levels above or beyond you, like maybe your community, your city, your state, your country, the political scale, the people that are in the public sphere, etc., etc. So I'm going to focus on the microcosm, which is our personal relationship with ourself, because everything outside of that is a reflection of what is inside of us. So what's coming up now and what will continue to come up through, it feels like the next 3 weeks, but for sure the next week to 2 weeks, is the shadows that have ruled, controlled, had power over your life. That maybe you have a shadow or a self-limiting story based in a past trauma, or that if you can think of the original wound or the trauma experience or the memory, or something that happened early on in your life, if you can think of that as the seed, and then the story of which you've created about yourself, about your life, about your experiences, is kind of like the plant that grew out of that. So we're being confronted with all of these weeds, like our fear weed garden. I even have a video about this actually. I have to find it. I'm not sure. It's older. Um, but these fear weed garden, we're being confronted to really see each individual weed and how it is spread and bled into other parts of our life. So let's say perhaps you have an experience with early on abandonment. You were abandoned by a family member or a loved one early on, and you created a story from that seed. Out of that seed birthed this plant or this idea or this self-limiting story that I'm not worthy, everybody leaves, I can't trust anyone. And so that weed or that story has limited you from having safe connections, from moving forward in your life, from taking certain risks, from feeling worthy enough or trusting yourself enough to pursue the things that you really love, and bled into other parts of your life. So now we're being confronted with these shadows within the self, and it is very uncomfortable, but it is such an important time, because you can't heal something you're not aware of. You can't heal something that you won't look at. You can't take your power back from something that you won't even touch or acknowledge or explore. So you cannot take these roots out of your being, out of yourself, if you're not willing to even look or address the plant. So That's such an important thing. So we're all being given this opportunity right now. To make it less scary, I want to put it in perspective because I think it's so important. And I was gifted with watching this Dolores Cannon talk on Amazon this past weekend. It's Dolores Cannon Transformation with an Audience, I think. It's one of her talks from 2012, right before, like a couple years before she passes. And if you don't know Dolores Cannon, she's one of the great matriarchs of the metaphysical realm in the Western world. So she really brought a lot of this into the like mainstream culture, let's say, or into the accessibility. So she's giving this talk, and to put this trauma revealing, let's say, or the shadow illumination into perspective, it's important to understand our multidimensional being, or our infinite structure, our universal state, which is we are not just confined to this body, to this life, to these experiences. We are pieces, we are drops of source energy that is learning about itself, and we are here to learn lessons. There are many different schools in the galaxy and the universe, but Earth is a school that we choose to come into to learn lessons, to evolve, to grow. And by learning those lessons, we take this valuable knowledge back to source to learn about the everything of what what happens in separation, because source is unity, source is love, source is the unified field where everything is connected. So for us to separate, the illusion of separation, for us to separate, to learn about ourselves, about the nature of reality, blah blah blah, because that's the only way to learn, and that's the only way for creation to happen, is through separation. Basically, if something is already unified, there's no space, there's no opposite or opposition for creation. There's no like combustibility, basically. So just like masculine, feminine needs to exist for creation to occur. If somebody, you can't have, I mean, there are some creatures, right? But for where we are as a species, there it takes two, and it takes that separation, the differences of the two sexes to create creation of life. So if that makes sense. So Earth is a school. We're here to learn lessons. If you don't learn the lesson, you have to take the class again. So we've all experienced that, or we've all had that period in our lives where it's like, why do I keep pulling in people like this? Or why does this type of person keep coming into my space? Or why do I keep learning about this money issue? Or why do I keep running into the same problem? Why do I keep having the same thing? Why is this happening to me? It's because you're not learning the lesson. So the lesson is going to keep coming and coming and coming and coming until you pass the class. It doesn't matter how many times you take it. You have infinite amount of times to take it. But until you pass that class, until you master that lesson, you're going to have to retake it. So when it comes to trauma, sometimes it's difficult for us to release the trauma, or to let go, or to move on, because we've created an identity around it, and that is what keeps us, you can think of it in the wheel of karma, or that's what keeps us in this circle of having to redo the lesson, because this is how I see myself, this is how I define myself. I can't get out of this because it means I'm somebody else, or it means it takes away from my experience because there isn't justice or whatever, like the still wanting to stay in the victim identity of these things happen to me, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to give you two paths for you to pull yourself out of this and choose which one resonates with you. So the 3D perspective, or let's say the more earthly, I don't know if earthly is the right word, 3D perspective, I prefer that. The 3D perspective is, I have an eyelash, sorry. The 3D perspective is that shit happens. Shit happens to all of us. Hurricanes happen, earthquakes happen, shit happens in your life that is out of your control. And so it's not what happens to you, but it's how you choose to deal with what happens, what you experience. That's what defines you. Shit happens that's out of our control, and it's the I love this story, which is the perfect example where there's two brothers. One grows up to be both raised by the same father. Two brothers, both raised by the same father, an alcoholic, abusive father, rough childhood, blah, blah, blah. The two brothers grow up. One grows up to be an addict, can't get his shit together, etc., etc. The other one grows up to be a successful businessman with a happy family. When asked why they became the way they were, both brothers said the exact same thing. How could I not be this way? Because of my father. So it is not what happens to us, it is how we choose to respond, to react, to interpret, to internalize it. It's how we choose to think about it. Our perception and our values and how we choose to align with our values and our goals is more important than what actually happened. There are things that are beyond our control. So that is the 3D perspective. The other thing is shit happens to everybody. Shit happens to everybody. It's all relative. It's all relative. Like everybody has had bad shit. Everyone's been betrayed. Everybody's been hurt by a loved one. Everybody's been lied to, had something that made them feel shameful. Everybody's been embarrassed. Everybody has these experiences. So you're no less, you're no different, you're no nothing. Everybody has had shit. So it's what you choose to do with it. If you choose to allow that, to give up your power to that experience, to continue to be a victim, to continue to say, oh, life happens to me, these things happen to me, that's your choice. That's what you're choosing. So there's this quote I saw, what you don't change, you choose. So if you are not changing your perspective or the way you feel about something you experience, you are choosing to experience that same thing over and over and over again. Okay, so that's the 3D perspective. Complementary or an expanded perspective of that is the 5D, or let's call it the higher perspective, which is you are a soul coming from Source God. You chose to experience certain lessons when you incarnated into this body. You chose to learn certain lessons when you incarnated into this body. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you're deserving of what happened to you. It doesn't mean you deserve to be abused. It doesn't mean that you deserve to feel betrayed or your trust lost or whatever. It doesn't mean that you are deserving of those things, but that you came into this life to learn certain lessons with certain people, or certain people came in as villains in your life to help you to learn this lesson. It doesn't excuse what they did, but it's an explanation. And so since you came in to learn this lesson, if you don't master this lesson, if you don't learn the lesson, if you don't take the lesson that is in that experience that you chose, you will continue to take that class. So you will have to come back and do it again, or you will be reconfronted with that same lesson over and over in this life if you choose not to address it, to look at it, to heal it, to try. It doesn't mean it has to be perfect. It doesn't mean it has to go away, but you have to try. So those are the two perspectives. Either way, it's out of your control, or it's a lesson that you chose and you chose here to learn it. And the best thing you can do in both of those situations is to learn the lesson, to take responsibility for your half of the things. And for some experiences, you potentially do have a half beyond just choosing to incarnate into this reality. For example, if you had an adult relationship with an abusive partner and you didn't leave and you chose to stay for 10 years, your half of the relationship, your half of that experience is choosing to put yourself back into that relationship. I'm not saying that what you experienced was right. I'm not saying that you should have experienced something negative. I'm not saying that you should be abused, but I'm saying that that's your half of the relationship. If you didn't know how to set boundaries, if you didn't know how to exercise yourself, if you didn't make the effort and take the energy to change, you were choosing to stay in that relationship, choosing to continue to experience the abuse because you weren't choosing change. So that's our half of the thing. So sometimes our half is just, I chose to incarnate into this lesson, to have this lesson as a child, something beyond my control, so I could grow and evolve and blossom out of that. Or I chose my responsibility, or my half of that lesson, that experience was whatever. Everything's going to be up to interpretation and individualized. So those are the two perspectives, whichever one resonates with you, or maybe they both do. But it leads to this point of forgiveness. So Don Miguel Ruiz talks about how forgiveness, it's the ultimate medicine. First of all, it's the ultimate medicine. It's the real steps and the real path to Christ consciousness or unity consciousness has to do with forgiveness. We have to be able to forgive the other, or what we perceive as the other, to be able to unify with it, to be able to bring it back into ourselves. So this includes forgiving our abusers, and not because they deserve to be abused, not because you deserved to be abused. Not because they deserve to be forgiven, and not because you deserved to be abused, but because you deserve to have peace. Forgiveness, forgive your abusers, forgive your parents, forgive your brothers and sisters, forgive your family, forgive the people that made you feel like shit, because you deserve to walk forward with peace, not because they necessarily deserve your forgiveness, but you deserve to be free of the burden of carrying this. And when we hold on to these resentments, when we don't forgive, most times that person doesn't even know you're carrying this thing. They don't even know that you are so pained. They don't know that you're carrying this like black ball of like all the time. You're the only one suffering with that. And also by you carrying this, you're only hurting yourself. Like there's a Buddhist expression, I believe, where it says anger is like drinking a poison and hoping the other person dies. You're the one taking the poison by holding on to this yuckiness. That other person isn't getting it. And by creating this karma within yourself of wishing ill on somebody else, or holding resentment, or holding negativity towards somebody, it's not so much that gets sent out, it's that it gets reflected back to you, because that's what you're holding inside of you. That's what you're radiating out. And so that's what you're going to continue to attract in. So you're going to continue to attract relationships that continue to embody or to resonate with that frequency that you are holding. So if you're holding on to a lot of pain, shame, resentment, anger, whatever, you're going to pull in experiences, relationships, and people that continue that cycle, that repeat that experience, that match the frequency in which you are radiating out. So forgiveness first for others. Trying, for me, what helped with processing my trauma was realizing that there were experiences that I couldn't control, and things that I chose to incarnate to experience on early in life. And if I chose to continue to see myself as a victim, I would continue to experience that same type of trauma. Or even if it wasn't happening in my real world, but because I was holding on to it, my perception was that it was around every corner, was that everybody was capable of it, that I was constantly experiencing it because I hadn't let it go, because I hadn't forgiven, because I hadn't forgiven others. And more importantly, I haven't forgiven myself. So that's what really helped me with my trauma work, was realizing that I incarnated into this life with certain experiences, with certain people, with certain lessons to learn for me to evolve out of, not to break me, but for me to grow out of. So by learning those lessons, I can help others on their journey, because I have also been through the shit. So if I chose to stay in my own shit, so to speak, I would never be able to offer this assistance, this guidance, this healing to others. So that's the other thing too. If you feel you are a healer, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to give something you don't have. So if your role, your goal, your mission here is to help others heal, until you heal yourself, you won't be able to give something you don't have. But you will give what you do have. So if all you have is pain, if all you have is trauma, if all you have is anger and blame towards others, that is what you'll be giving. That is what you'll be offering to the world and to your potential clients. So it's very important. Like if you are a healer, your healing always starts with yourself. Your relationship with all the people around you is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. It's never more true than when you are in a healing or a guidance role. So if you do choose to take that path, it's very important that that's a priority for you in whatever way that looks. Everybody has different methods. So the forgiveness of others. More importantly, the deeper layer in is forgiveness of ourselves. So usually when we've experienced trauma, we blame ourselves, which is why there is a subtle line of blame and responsibility, where encouraging taking radical self-responsibility, being honest and authentic of, oh, maybe I didn't know how to set good boundaries at the time. It's not blaming you, but it's giving an explanation. You're taking responsibility for like, oh, I never learned how to set good boundaries. That wasn't a model I had growing up, so I never knew how. That was my responsibility now that I have the clarity and I'm out of that situation, or it's been time or whatever, to see that that's something that I need to work on to remedy or prevent or whatever these situations. So that's a huge thing, is taking responsibility for our half of the things where we can do healing, where we can continue to distance ourselves from matching those situations. So forgiving yourself for not just being abused or for allowing yourselves to be abused before the times when you became your own abuser. And that's really the big thing, is that when we experience these traumatic events, it creates distrust within the self. We question whether we can trust our decision-making skills. We question whether we can trust what we decide to do, who we decide to be with. We question our inner trust and our inner relationship. And so healing, bridging that is the beginning, and it begins and ends, and the road is always forgiveness of the self. If you can't forgive yourself for the times you fucked up, basically, or the times where you allowed yourself to be hurt, or where you hurt yourself, or where others hurt you and then you in turn started hurting yourself, if you can't forgive yourself for that, how are you supposed to unify with those pieces that are separate of you? If you go back to the video, how self-judgment affects your energy, the way the guidance showed it to me is like a blooming onion, and I don't have a better explanation, but these aspects of yourself that you judge are connected to you because they're still aspects of yourself, so they're connected to you somewhere, but they are distanced from yourself. So they instead of being a unified pillar, it's more like you have these offshoots, like a blooming onion or like a pine cone. And so to pull your energy back to you, to be able to harness your energy, to be able to be a unified and whole being, you have to close that distance through forgiveness, acceptance, awareness, and illumination. And so forgiving ourselves is the ultimate, and it takes time. It's like a peeling back of layers, but you're given the opportunity right now to address and heal the shadows that have enslaved you, your own shadows and stories and limitations and whatever other bullshit that has enslaved you for maybe your whole lifetime here. You have the opportunity to heal those, to address those. And like, yeah, it's super uncomfortable to acknowledge like, oh, I created all of this shit. It was really uncomfortable. So for my own journey, I was over 220 pounds at one time, which I'm athletic. I like to move around, but I was so, I remember blaming my mom, like, how can you let me eat these things? I remember blaming other people. Like, I remember being so upset for a long time, like, because it took, it was a cycle, it was a pattern. And it wasn't until I really looked at myself and really coming to the acceptance and the understanding of like, fuck, like, I created all of this. I created all of this. This is my fault. This was my responsibility. Like, I did this to myself. It was no one else's responsibility or job or anything. It was 100% mine. And coming to that realization, that understanding, that unity with the self, basically, or that just real, true honesty, is so uncomfortable, especially if you've been raised in an environment where it's the blame game, where it's always someone else's fault. It's never your fault. It's always someone else's. Like, fuck that guy, fuck that girl, fuck that whoever. Like, it's always someone else. It's never you. So if you were raised in that, of course, it's going to be very hard to look at yourself and be honest of like, fuck, I did this to myself. But pretty much everything you did, if not everything, like I said, there may be like earthquakes happen, fires happen, these things that happen that are out of your control sometimes, or you incarnated in to learn this lesson. But what you did with it after, that was a moment in time. If you can think about your entire life experience, let's say that that was an hour and you have 1 million other hours in your life. If you've spent the other whatever, however many hours of your life beating yourself up, limiting yourself, looking for that experience again, pulling it in, doing these things, you did those to yourself. If you spent the other time keeping yourself in that low position, that's your responsibility. If you had wounds, if you had emotions that you weren't addressing, and then you got sick, there are earlier signs, there are warning signs, there are whispers of the body, there are whispers of the universe, there are whispers of your own healing before it becomes a scream. And this is true of everything. There are whispers in a relationship of like, these things need to be addressed and healed before the relationship breaks. There are whispers in your physical body of, hey, this is out of alignment, we need help here, before it becomes a scream and turns into like a cancer or an autoimmune or whatever. There are whispers of spirit and universe and your guidance team and yourself, your higher self, talking to you to initiate healing. And if you don't listen to them, that's your responsibility. That is your responsibility. There are signs. There are signs before in most everything. And so it's important to take that radical responsibility and to acknowledge that, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable and you are going to have to see yourself differently. But if you don't change the things you don't like, you are choosing to keep those around. You are choosing to prolong the experience. You are choosing to be a victim, or you are choosing to be a limited being, or you're choosing to be. So even better, if you don't change the things that make you feel unworthy, if you don't change the habits, beliefs, thoughts, patterns, wounds, whatever, that make you feel unworthy, then you're choosing to feel unworthy. If you don't change the habits, patterns, beliefs, thoughts, stories about yourself, about being overweight, and the roots of those, then you're choosing to be overweight. If you don't look at the thoughts, beliefs, patterns, stories, energies, wounds around your sexual comfort, if you feel comfortable with your sexual identity and your sexual practice, then you're choosing that discomfort. You're choosing the shame in that. And so those are that's what I'm trying to say. And if you don't learn this lesson now, you're going to have to keep taking that class. So like, for example, I was even telling my partner last night, when I was suicidal, when I was really at the bottom of the shit, like before I took responsibility, as I just mentioned, when I was really at the bottom, what kept me is I had this deep, deep knowing of, fuck, I can't go out like this, because if I don't learn these lessons, if I don't face these shadows, I will have to come back and do it again. And that's entirely true. Like, you don't get out of learning any lesson. Like, we are the universe experiencing itself. So we have to experience everything. So this time around, your batch of experiences is what you've gone through. Doesn't mean you're going to experience everything in this life, but you're going to experience what you chose to come in with. And so if you don't actively participate in that class and that lesson and learning and moving out of that class, moving beyond that grade, you're going to have to come back and take it. You're going to have to come back and take it in this life or the next or whatever your perception is. So you don't get out of anything. You choosing to not address it doesn't mean it go away. You choosing to not address your physical symptoms doesn't mean they magically disappear. You choosing not to address the problems in your relationship doesn't mean they go away. And just the same thing in your own personal relationship with yourself. The things that you are choosing not to look at in yourself, they don't go away. They don't end, they don't disappear, they don't just poof, and you get out of it and like, oh, if I don't look at it, maybe it'll disappear, like the opposite. The less you look at it, the bigger it gets until you can't ignore it, as we all have experienced in different ways in our life. So you are an empowered being. You can do this. You don't need anyone else to do your healing. What it takes is authenticity, being honest with yourself, like really, really honest. Like I had to with myself, with my weight, because that was the first layer I took off because it was my most uncomfortable. Was I don't like being in this physical body so big. I want to be able to move. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way I look. I'm uncomfortable being like this because I know I'm hurting myself to do this, and I'm uncomfortable with the patterns and habits and the thoughts that have got me to this point. I'm uncomfortable. And then realizing and coming into acceptance with, I did this to myself. This is my fault. This is my responsibility. I did this. Okay, so now it's my responsibility. I did this. So not only am I responsible for the negative things in my life, but I'm responsible for the positive things. I'm responsible for how I choose and what I choose to do with this. And so, like I said, that transition was very uncomfortable, but it's also, that is your sovereignty. That is your empowered being. You are in charge with how you feel about your life. So as the mainstream media or the news or whatever attempts to continue to pump fear into you and to others, you choose what you experience. You don't have to accept someone else's perception of reality. You don't have to accept someone else's story or someone else's version of events. You don't have to take the invitation just because you're invited. You don't have to take the invitation to be afraid just because you've been invited to be afraid to the fear party. You don't have to take that dance with shame again just because it's opened its hand to you. You don't have to do those things. You are an empowered being. Just because you have done this dance or this lap or this circle or this lesson more than once and it's familiar doesn't mean you have to continue to do it. You are empowered. And I'm not saying these things are easy, but they're the only way. It's your choice. We have limited time here. We have limited time to enjoy our lives, to get the benefits of it, to live in a state of joy and bliss and unity and community and connection. And if you're continuing to behave in the ways that are keeping you separate from that reality that you want, you're choosing the reality you don't want. You're choosing that. You're choosing to keep yourself there. And so that's healing. That's the path to healing, is if you continue to make someone else responsible for your experiences, if you make the government responsible, your parents, your siblings, your teachers, your whoever, it's someone else's fault that you didn't do this. You are continuing to give up your power. You will never be an empowered being because someone else always has the power, the string, the leash of your life. And that is not true. It's much easier to blame others because then you're not responsible for any part of your life. So if things are shitty, you can blame someone else and it's not your responsibility. But if things are shitty, you also have no power to change them, to improve them. If you're going to blame people for the bad stuff, then you don't have any power or ability to create good stuff. Because if someone has that much power over your life, you don't have enough. So it's so important moving forward. This is what you're invited to. I'm inviting you to, along with the universe. I'm just the messenger, but the universe is inviting you to uncover, to reveal, to look at, to heal the limiting beliefs that have kept you enslaved in your life. And so this is the what they're showing me is like it's your opportunity to what they're showing me is it's your opportunity to unshackle yourself, to remove the chains, to liberate yourself right now. We are moving forward in the ascension. The split between and I got confirmation of this finally, of how this was making sense. I didn't understand like in the 3D. Conceptually I got it, but like physically I couldn't understand how it would work. But we're going to continue to move into the ascension process. We're going to continue to move in the 5D. And so as we move into 5D, the frequency, the energies will be vibrating at a different frequency. So if you can think about, this is the example Dolores Cannon used in that talk I mentioned, is like when you look at a fan or a propeller, it's moving so fast that you can't see it. And so that's the same thing in these other dimensions or these other beings or these other entities or the things that are beyond the veil, so to speak, is that they're vibrating at a frequency at which we can't see in the 3D physical world of which we know. So as the 3D, 5D split continues to happen, those that choose to stay in 3D will be anchored to the physical earth due to these negative and heavy emotions like fear, shame, guilt, hate, separation, like all of that, resentment. All of those things will anchor you, will keep your energetic frequency low and anchored to the earth because they are heavier, they are slower frequencies, versus if you allow yourself to be unshackled from those things, if you allow yourself to be liberated from those things, your energetic frequency will rise, it will vibrate higher and faster, so to speak, and you will be able to move into the 5D experience with the rest of us. And so I don't quite know how it's going to work, like if the veil, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out in the physical world. Like if people that are in 5D will have a different perception of reality, which is what I think will happen because it's already happening. Like my perception of what is occurring in the state of the world is very different than someone that is indoctrinated and mastered by fear. So the split is already here, but it's going to become more and more pronounced. And so you are being invited, you are giving it's almost like, especially the astrology is set up for this, and just the time of the year, all of that. But you can think about it as if the current, like the universal current, is taking you to this healing space if you want it. It's like it's creating the conditions for this type of healing in this moment, in this passage, this next passage. And so if you choose to take that ride, you can kind of expedite your experience. You can use the current. It's like sailing. It's like the winds will take you there if you just open up your sail and like let it, go that way. So be open to the idea of flowing, be open to the idea of allowing the miracles into your space, because the other cool thing about this healing modality is that, and by healing and removing your own layers and your own stuff, basically, or integrating it is probably a better word than removing, integrating it back into yourself through forgiveness and unity and compassion and acceptance. But you also, by letting go of this heavy stuff, you open yourself up to these like light miracles, to the magic that is available in life. And if you can drop these lower frequencies and move into that higher frequency, your ability to manifest is much quicker. You pull in better people, better experiences. You pull in experiences that match you. So if you're embodying and radiating a frequency and energy of love and acceptance and unity and connection, those are the type of people and experiences you're going to pull in. That's going to be your reality because you made it that way, because you're choosing that. You're choosing those things and you're creating it, and you're actively participating in the creation of it. You're co-creating that reality. So it's such a beautiful thing, and I wish it for everybody. But like, yeah, you got to go through the shit to get there. It's not, if your garden is full of fear weeds, you can't, there's no space for the roses and the plumerias and the beautiful flowers and the fruit trees to grow, because the soil is full. I mean, all the fear roots and weeds are there. You got to take that stuff out. You have to remove so you can put in the good stuff. You got to take out the bad stuff so you can put in the good stuff, basically. So I just really wanted to share that everything is primed for this right now, and to put it into perspective and just give the tools. So I'm finishing up the completion energy. Also, if you have any, who is telling me this? Oh, my friend. She's telling me completion energy is huge right now because there's so many processes and we're about to go into Mercury retrograde. But as a Gemini, I have to really work to complete things. I really like starting things. Completing is not as fun for me. So I am completing this week the guided Kundalini and Chakra Awakening, which will be free. Because it's really important to me that you learn how to master your breath and the flow of energy in your body. In it, I am teaching the serpentine breathing, which was like gifted to me. I don't know. It's the breathing that was taught to me through my guidance system. And that's what I've been doing with my clients. That's what I do with myself. And it's amazing. And so the serpentine breathing will be, it's a progressive training basically to the serpentine breathing. So I will put that in the YouTube links or the videos and stuff as soon as I have the links. But that's coming. And then join my Carousel Divine Online memberships. We do small intimate group work, and I'm here to support you. And they will be getting, my members will be getting more action items to basically make everything I said in this video a reality, like a way to do it. So please join me there if you would like the steps, basically, like the more hands-on guidance, let's say, rather than just like the outline or the map. So thank you so much, my friends. Thank you for sharing this virtual space with me. I really appreciate your support and your watching the video and staying with me all this time. And I will be with you so soon. Be well, my friends. I'm sending you so much love and strength and inner peace and that clarity of right here, just being able to see and really feeling that connection to source of what you are, because that is what you are. You are the power. You are a little light being of source divine energy, and that's who you really are. So carry on, my friends. I will be with you so soon, and thank you.